Hey y'all, welcome to Pour. We're so glad to have y'all tuned in with us tonight. Sorry the weather is kind of dreary, but we're hoping that y'all are all sitting on your couches, drinking the wine, and having so much fun. Please don't forget to post your questions to us on our Instagram, and please post pictures and tag Pour. We're so excited to have y'all, so thank y'all so much for being here.
Guys, we can't believe this is our 6th Pour. It's going by so quick, but we are so happy that you're here. With Pour, our mission is to create inclusive community in which women can be poured into, pursue their purpose, and collectively navigate life's challenges, all in Christ's name. And we are here with two really great people tonight. We have Shan Cooper and our special prayer, Kelsey and Basil. We are so excited. She is going to be phenomenal, and she's going to open us in prayer and tell us a little bit about herself. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Hey guys, I am Kelsey Ann. Hard last name, Basil, but gets confusing a lot. I live in Atlanta, and Miss Katie Brown has been my small group leader, one of my small group leaders for the past 5 years now, which has been an amazing privilege, and that's why I'm here tonight. She asked me to share a little bit of my story to kind of open the night and tie us into what Shan's going to speak a little bit about. So I'm going to do just that. This year we've all been in a pandemic for now over a year, so we've all been experiencing a little bit of suffering here and there. My kitchen and basement flooded on Sunday night, so that was a fun little bit of suffering that really prepared my heart to speak tonight. But anyway, so one of the themes she's going to talk about is questioning the why, questioning God on the why of why we have to suffer, why we are put through certain things in our life. So I'm going to share a little bit about what my cross has been to bear throughout my life. I have a disease named alopecia areata. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it. It's super rare. But you may have heard from someone who's been impacted by it, so I'll tell you a little bit about it because you likely haven't heard about it. So alopecia areata is an autoimmune disorder that causes your cells to attack your hair follicles all over your body. When you are mentally totally fine, physically totally healthy, there is no cure for it. So the past 3-4 years of my life has been a lot of testing and trials and all kinds of stuff to make my hair grow back. Praise be to Jesus. My hair is here today, which is very exciting. But it could be gone again tomorrow, and that is part of the disease. It's lifelong. So a couple areas of the suffering part of alopecia areata. There's no cure. I've been through monthly shots for 3 years, multiple surgeries, tested laser treatments, lots of creams, lots of topicals, lots of blood work, lots of tears, 4 wigs, so lots of fun stuff. I actually ended up having to shave my head a couple weeks before my wedding, or 2 months before my wedding, and by the grace of God, my hair actually came back by my wedding day, and I was able to walk down the aisle with my own hair, which was really, really cool. 2 funny stories just about suffering and like learning to see the joy in suffering. One time I was headed to a doctor's appointment down Highway 400, and it was my second time getting shots in my head, and it would be like around 70 shots at a time in your head. So it was something that I would sometimes get a little bit nervous about. And I missed the exit to the doctor, and plowed straight through the exit sign, uprooted the exit sign, completely tore up my car, knocked out the back windshield in the pouring rain, put a yoga mat over my back windshield, marched into the doctor's office, and got my shots in my head. And then another time I was at a Target, and a cashier lady, this was after I shaved my head, and I wasn't wearing a wig at the time, and it comes in like 1-inch circle spots around your head and really all over your body. But a lady stopped me and she was like, "Oh my gosh, did you get a cheetah tattoo on your head?" I said, "No, honey, this is only God's work to do this." So anyways, I have had lots of humor throughout the process, lots of highs, lots and lows. But mentally, it's a really hard disease to have, knowing that you really are questioning the why God of the suffering. Lots of tears, lots of feeling like an ugly duckling at times. But anyways, I'm on the other side to tell the story and to keep telling the story. So I'm thankful for this opportunity. But that's just an example of my cross to bear. And I know that all of you listening have your own crosses that you're bearing, whether that means mentally or physically, or suffering from loss of a friend or a loved one. We all are going through something, and going through suffering just brings us closer to God, and suffering well is really the true mark of a Christian. Being able to show people how to be a Christian through adversity is the biggest testimony you could give. So I'm going to close and open us in prayer. I'm going to read one verse really quick before I leave you. So that verse, if you have your Bible, you can turn to 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18. And it says, "So we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light and momentary affliction," alopecia for me, "is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal." So that being said, all of us are stuck with our things in these imperfect bodies, and suffering is just refining us and preparing us for our eternal glory with our Savior. So with that being said, I'm going to open us in prayer and pray over Shan and all the words that she has to say tonight. So please bow your heads with me. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this night. Thank you for the rain. Thank you for this earth. Please be with us where we are, meet us where we are in all of our suffering journeys and all of life's imperfections. Let us draw nearer and closer to you because of it. Dear Lord, I pray that you will open our hearts and our ears in this time tonight to learn something from you that we didn't know before, or even come to know you tonight. Dear Lord, I pray for Shan. I pray that it will be your words, not hers. That you will just speak directly to us through her heart and touch the hearts of everyone tuning in. And dear Lord, I thank you for technology and the fact that we can do this. And thank you for the wonderful three ladies that started this whole thing in this awesome ministry. And it's in your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Kelsey Ann.
Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you.
And welcome, Shan.
Thank you.
We're so glad to have you. I would say she needs no introduction, which is probably true for me, who wakes up most days and wonders how I can be Shan Cooper when I grow up. But for your benefit, I will tell you a little bit about what she does. I may give the short, abbreviated version because truly the list is endless and I don't want to embarrass you. So Shan's current role is serving as the executive director for the Atlanta Committee for Progress, which strives to provide leadership on key issues important to economic growth and inclusion for all citizens in the city of Atlanta, which I jokingly but accurately described earlier as perhaps helping CEOs set goals outside of the workplace and accomplish them for the benefit of the city.
Yeah, I'll
Maybe?
take it.
Fair?
I'll take it. I like
Great. Perfect. And prior to that, she has held a couple of other incredible positions. She served as the Chief Transformation Officer of WestRock. She served as the Vice President and General Manager of Lockheed Martin and was responsible for 6,000 employees all across Georgia, Mississippi, and West Virginia. And those are just corporate jobs. On top of that, she has served on a number of boards, has won countless awards, and we are lucky enough to have her here with us tonight, and we are so excited to talk to you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful invitation. Glad to be here.
It is just the best. It is so fun. So I know we've teed up this incredible professional life that you've had, but completely switching gears, wanted to take a step back and really start with a few personal things. When we were planning for tonight a few weeks ago, I loved what you shared about growing up, your childhood, your family life, and your early faith journey. Yes. So I was hoping you could share a little bit of that with us.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm a pastor's kid. I grew up in the Pentecostal faith, and I'll tell you, growing up the first half of my life, never wore makeup, but I'll tell you right now, I will never leave home without this makeup again. But I grew up in Pentecostal. My dad was a pastor, and we my dad was amazing. My parents were amazing because we always had someone living with us.
Yeah.
And so we always believed in service, right? Service above self is what he always taught us. And so growing up, I tell you, I didn't really love the life that I grew up in initially. I appreciate it today because it taught me discipline. But back then, if you can imagine being a child and you were in church every night except for one, that was on Thursday nights, because Thursday nights were choir rehearsal nights, and so we didn't have to go to church that night. But every night of the week, and Saturday nights, and Sundays, all day, we were in church. And again, growing up, I was very envious of my friends, right?
Yeah.
Because they were out playing and doing all the things that young kids like to do. And we didn't get a chance to do that. Well, I didn't. Actually, I didn't get a chance to do much of that. But it was the home where my dad always taught us the love of God, right? And so God is love. He just drilled that into us. And so based upon that, it just became easier for me in my life to just love people, right? To love people, regardless of how they were shaped or colored or whatever. Just love people. And I appreciate the life I have today. I can remember growing up, my homework, it's a miracle of God that I probably graduated because I did my homework on the back pew of the church, me and my other friends, my other church friends. But that was how I grew up in my life, right? And so very disciplined. The Bible, we studied the Bible like we studied our schoolwork. And so from Genesis to Revelation, I could probably talk to anybody about it. But as we all know, talking about it though isn't just enough, right? We have to live it, right?
Absolutely.
And so I'll tell you also early on, and probably in those earlier years, it was more probably knowing God through my parents and not really knowing Him for myself. And I can remember that the pivotal moment in my life was my senior year in high school. And you guys will not know anything about this, but when you're in the Pentecostal faith, you have what they call tent revivals. Big tents go up in communities. You remember that? Have you been to one, Katie?
I haven't been to one, but I have heard stories.
You've heard stories, right?
Set the scene. Let's hear it.
Exactly. So there's big tent. So my grandmother, my dad's mom, is calling me like all week saying, baby, I really want you to go to service with me one night. And I'm saying, oh, Grandma, I'll go. And so I did one night because I just loved my grandmother. So I'll just go just to appease her. And it changed my life because that was the first time that I could actually say that I met God for myself. And not because of what my parents had taught me or because of their relationship with Him. I met Him for myself that night. And that changed my life. Now, will tell you, didn't make me an angel in the moment, right? But it started me on a different journey. It started me, I think, on a phase of my life where I really wanted to try to learn who God really was for myself.
Yeah, which that transition, I think, is so perfect to one of the you said so many interesting things, and your life truly is just fascinating and beautiful in so many ways. But I love, and I feel like it's so relatable, the way that you talk about, you had so much head knowledge, even at such a young age, and you can't, neglect or avoid any of that. You're going to walk through life having all of that head knowledge. But to what you just said, the heart knowledge came a little bit later. Yes. But then as you went through high school and then started to enter college, you pursued the head knowledge even further and in a kind of different way while continuing to grow your heart knowledge. So talk to us a little bit about that.
I did. So most people don't know this, but I actually have a degree in religion. Because I had spent my entire life just really understanding and knowing the Pentecostal faith, right? But I knew there were other religions out there, but didn't know anything about them. And so I decided I'd go to Emory and I'd study religion, and had the opportunity to really learn and see faith from a different perspective. It didn't I was grounded in what I knew, Katie. And so some people often say, well, Shan, why would you do that? I mean, your faith is the faith, right? Exactly, right? But I really wanted to understand when people talked about, Catholicism, what was that about? What did that really mean, right? So I got to go to a mass. I went to a synagogue.
As part of getting your degree?
As part of this degree, we had a chance to actually experience the worship experience that the various religions, went through. And it was very different from my faith, of course. Pentecostal services, if you haven't been to there, we're pretty live in a Pentecostal service, right? We'd be running up and down these aisles right now, right? But I had a chance to see faith from a different perspective and didn't change with my views and my beliefs. But it caused me to respect what other people believed and actually brought me closer into my own walk.
Wow. This is I hope to not put you on the spot too terribly
No,
much,
that's okay.
but
Go ahead.
this is sort of a theological question.
Sure.
I think it's so neat that you chose to do that, because when I was in college, I think I had honestly a totally opposite experience, where there was a really famous professor at my school who was a pastor who eventually became an atheist, I believe was the transition, and he taught a New Testament class. And it sort of famously was one that could really ground people in their conviction for Christianity, but for other people it could be really altering. And I never took that class, and I regret it now knowing what I know, but at the time I was so nervous to take that class because I thought it was going to challenge my faith sort of beyond repair. So walking what you walked through, learning about so many different faiths, probably seeing a lot of validity in all the things that you learned, like what sort of cemented Christianity for you?
Well, I think the experiences and the testimonies I had seen as I was growing up, right? So I had witnessed and know people who have been healed from cancer. I have witnessed and I know people who have, found, the things that they needed in their lives to be whole. And once you see that, you really can't deny who God is, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to intellectually understand other religions, but my heart was still based upon what was written in the Word, right? And so I don't waver around. I didn't waver around that. And trust me and my professors had some interesting conversations.
Sure. I can only imagine.
And they probably hate me to this day, but it was an opportunity though, right? Because so it kind of really cemented what I knew to be true. And so once you've had an experience with God, I mean, there's nothing that I don't think that anybody could say or do that would change or cause me to waver in any way about who God is. But it came from that experience, right?
Absolutely.
It came from that experience.
So again, kind of combination of heart knowledge and head knowledge, where you knew the truth and you had these examples to draw on, where you had seen God really at work in people's lives. I love that. I think one of the things that you said that was really special too was talking about that experience as you were studying in college, teaching you to be more mindful of others and the way that you interact with people of other faiths. So what does that look like in your daily walk now, or what did it look like then?
So the one thing that I do not do is I don't judge, right? I don't have the mind of God. I mean, he talks to, our ways are not his ways, our thoughts are not his thoughts. And so I don't judge people. And so if you don't believe what the way I believe, I just have to pray for you, right? Pray that you will be enlightened, or maybe I need to be enlightened, right? And so how many times have you read a scripture and got new meaning from you? There are scriptures that I read today that I get new meaning from, though I've read it throughout my entire life, right? Yeah. But there's a revelation knowledge that comes with time and with prayer and study. And so I don't judge people. I pray for them. I pray a lot for myself though. And pray that God will bring us all into the knowledge of his truth.
Absolutely.
So no judging. I stay in the no judging zone.
No judging. I think that's such a good one. And just a posture of listening and hearing and understanding.
Absolutely.
I love that. So I think something that everyone may and probably doesn't necessarily know about you is you have this strong conviction. You've got this incredible evidence of things that you've seen happen. You've learned so much. You understand the Bible and you know what it looks like to walk with the Lord. But that doesn't necessarily mean that life has just been the easiest thing ever and you've been through your fair share of hard things. I think one thing that was really special to hear you talk about was the loss of a close family member. Which if you're open to it, I would love for you to share a little bit of that with us.
Absolutely, and I'll try not to cry because and I was probably.
If you cry, I'll cry. So
I know I'm not even making eye contact. I'm not making eye contact right now. But my dear cousin Deanna, who was just like my own daughter, I just loved her so much, and she spent a lot of time with me and my family as a little girl, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And by the time we figured it out, it was stage 4, and she was 24 years old. And I tell you, I don't think I've ever prayed so much in my life. And I remember questioning God, saying, God, I'm asking this of you. I have been faithful. I have done what I think you've called me to do, but I'm asking you to spare her life. Don't take her from us. And he did. And I can remember praying afterwards, and because it broke my heart. And when I study my Bible, I'll often just have it in front of me, and I'll say, God, tell me what I need to know about you today. And I opened the Bible, and he took me to the book of Mark. And in there was a scripture that talks about how he has to sometimes take those, right?
Help my unbelief.
Yeah, but he takes the elite sometimes, right? He takes the ones that we love because their assignment is complete. And if he doesn't take them from the earth now, right? They may not get to where he needs them to be. And so she had finished her journey, and this was a remarkable young lady. She was working in her church. She had written a play about finding Christ. I mean, she was ministering to people, you know, her youth group. Just an incredible disciple of God, right? So I just couldn't understand it. But when I read that scripture, and I said to him, God, I understand. You know, you don't make mistakes. But what you've got to help me do is to be able to handle this now, right? Because my heart's broken. There's a void now. But you said, I mean, I believe and trust that you said you never leave nor forsake me, right? Yeah. And so right now I need you here with me to get me through this. And he did. And he did. And so I recognize that her assignment was complete. She's resting in heaven now and doing whatever she's doing up there, dancing in the streets of gold. I don't know.
Probably watching you tonight.
Probably watching me tonight. I don't know. But that was a very hurtful thing. So, but what it taught me is that sometimes God says no, right?
Yeah.
But when he says no, he gives us a way of dealing with the no. And sometimes it's just a not now, right? Because maybe I'm not ready or someone else isn't ready. But that was a hard thing for me to do because I prayed and I believed and I had faith and I know he can do anything.
Absolutely.
But that's the one thing that he did not give me.
Yeah. I love what you shared earlier too, sort of in contrast to that, where you've seen or experienced what seems like maybe miracle healings. And I'm sure it was so hard to think about some of those examples from other people's lives.
Exactly.
And how do you reconcile that? How do you walk forward in that?
Exactly.
I feel like suffering is one of sometimes the greatest barriers for people. Like how does a loving God allow suffering in the world? I know, drawing back on that same professor I was talking about earlier, that was one of his key points that he couldn't get past was how does a loving God allow suffering? So yeah, just throwing some big questions at you tonight. Right. But how do you reconcile those two? Watching some healings happen and not experiencing healing here.
Exactly. And so I think you have, it goes back to the mind of God, right? So I strongly believe that my purpose in life and just the fullness of my life is wrapped in God's promises, right? And so what he requires of me is that I believe what he says. And so believing what he says doesn't mean that I'm going to always get what I want, right? I mean, growing up, we were poor. And I would hear people talk all the time about, you know, our Father has, you know, cattle on 1,000 hills and riches and glory. And I'm like, well, God, where's ours, right? You know, milk and all these things that this God had, right? Yeah. But we didn't have any of that, right? And I would question, you know, why do we have to suffer? Why don't I have the things that I want? Because you're just a child, you know, you want things, right? I always had what I needed, though, but there were things that I wanted. And what I really had to understand is that and recognize that God doesn't always give us everything we want. We get what we need based upon his view of what we need, right? But I do believe today, and my pastor says this all the time, you know, that God has a vision for our lives, right? That is greater than any vision we can have for ourselves or that others can have for us. We just have to walk in that and believe that. And so, again, I've seen, you know, why Deanna had to pass on and other people have been healed. I just have to trust that he doesn't make mistakes and that there's a purpose and a reasons for his decisions.
Absolutely. Well, I can only imagine how many people are going to be trying to track you down now, hearing you talk about that after they watch this video. Okay. So hope your email inbox is ready.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. That is all, I think, just a lot of good things to think on and reflect on. So we so appreciate it. So transitioning back to working life. Okay. Speaking of no's, not now's, and transitions. So once you left school with the degree that you had, what you had learned, you have gone into just an incredible career path. Did you know what you wanted to do, or did you figure that out as you went? What did your sort of professional walk look like coming out of school?
Right. So I told you, I spent my entire life saying I was going to be a doctor.
It's always fun when that happens.
Is that you know, you got to be a doctor,
I felt like
you
that
gotta
too
be a lawyer,
until
right?
I took Biology 101 and had to pass fail it.
No, I actually
you probably made it further than I did.
I got the biology degree. I took the MCAT, walked out of the MCAT, and thought,
yeah.
oh my gosh, I need to go to work. I'm poor, and I don't think I wanted to go to medical school right now. And so, fortunately for me, God has always orchestrated my life in that these angels kind of show up, right, throughout. And so, I've interviewed really for one job in my entire career because those angels were just always there. And I can remember coming from the NCAT, I was working at the business school at Emory and talking to my boss there saying, gosh, I need to get a job. You know, I can't go back home. I don't have any money. And he says to me, well, you know, the professor down the street, down the hall here, has a friend who's starting a new bank, who's a newly chartered bank. And I said, wow. And I thought, banking, that has to be below me. Yeah, it has to be below me, right? Look, I have a degree in biology,
you're
right?
You're going to be a doctor.
Come on, I'm going to be a doctor. You're
not a banker.
Right? A teller, no less, whatever. So what ended up happening was I ended up taking my best friend to interview for a job at this bank. Some guy walks in the lobby. We start talking because I can talk to the dead. And as I learned later, as I'm getting ready to leave, a lady walks out and said, you know, Mr. Oris would like for you to give him a call. And it turns out that Mr. Oris is the CEO of the bank. And so
that surprises me 0% that happened.
This God orchestrating, right?
Wow.
And that was how I got my first job out of college.
Wow.
And so I was a bank teller, if you can believe that.
Wow.
And thank God that didn't last, right? Because
it's good that they accepted your CAT scores.
Right. Right. So I ended up going, working in banking for a while, and then decided that I'd go back and get my MBA, which I did. And while I was working on my MBA, met the head of HR for Lockheed. It was Lockheed at that time. We became good colleagues, good friends. And he said to me, when you're done with your MBA, give me a call. I got a job for you.
Wow.
And that was how I got to Lockheed.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the first time.
Oh, gosh, that is awesome. Well, and I'm glad we're on Lockheed because I think truly one of my favorite stories that you shared with me, you probably already know exactly what I'm talking about, was a really difficult sort of instance in your professional life, something that you had to navigate that was really hard and complicated. And I think for many of us, it's really relatable to think, just to kind of think on how do I navigate the intersection of my work and my faith? Right. And when conflict arises, how do I deal with that? How do I stay true to myself, stay true to what I believe, but deal with what's in front of me? And so I don't even think I need to tee it up any further than that. I'm quite positive you know what I'm talking about. The floor is yours.
Right. So during my tenure at Lockheed, one of my jobs was I was the head of diversity and inclusion for the corporation. And the company had decided that they were going to allow, these employee resource groups, what they call them now, back then they were called affinity groups, to form. And one of the organizations, one of the group of community of employees who wanted to form was with the LGBT community. It was just LGBTQ back then, LGBT back then. And, but there were Christians in the company who felt very strongly about we should not allow that as a company. And at one of the facilities, they had decided they were going to do a walkout. And the last thing you want when you're in a company is to have your production line stop working, right? More importantly, you don't want your employees feeling disenfranchised, anybody feeling disenfranchised. So I was talking to our CEO, and I said, well, Bob, I'm going to go and meet with these employees because we can't have them walk out. And he was like, are you crazy? Right? And I'm like, yes, I'm going to go sit down and talk with them, right? And so he just couldn't believe, well, do you want security? I'm like, I don't think I need security. I said, these are Christians and I'm a Christian and I think we should be able to sit down and have a conversation about this.
Absolutely.
And so I walk into this room and they're sitting around a circle. There's a seat right there for me. And everybody's got a Bible. I don't have a Bible because I'm coming from my office, right? So I'm not running a revival. I'm just going to a meeting. And I walk in and I sit down and we have a heart-to-heart conversation. And I listen first. Let them express their views and why they felt the way they felt. And then I shared with them that I was a PK, a pastor's kid. And we talked and they had scripture and I had a scripture here. And at the end of the day, I just said to them, I said, listen, the one thing that Christians should not ever do, You should never be in a position where you're pushing people away from God and who He is. And I think this right here pushes people away from God. And you can't draw people, right?
Yeah.
Regardless if they're right or wrong, what you believe, what they believe, you can't draw them if you're pushing them away. If that's what your intent is, if that's what you say your charter here on earth, you know, is to go and spread the gospel and draw people to Christ, you can't do that if you're pushing people away. So how do you draw people in? And that was how we had, that was the conversation that we had, right? And they didn't do the walkout. Everybody went back to work. But I just felt like it was important that I go and talk with these employees and hear their voices, right? Because they had a voice there. And I also talked about judging, right?
Right.
Because, you know, God made us all, and He'll decide, right? If we've done the things that He wants us to do.
Right.
But right now, our job is to draw people to Christ, and you do that by showing love. Right? You do that by allowing people to see the God in you, not carrying your Bible, right?
Yeah.
Or carrying a cross or whatever. But we have to draw people to Him. And we do that again by loving people.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to go re-listen to this and write that down, put it in my pocket so I can carry it around everywhere I go.
Yeah. So I have to share one
So
more
true.
thing,
Please.
Katie, because, you know, one of the things that I do whenever I'm giving a business speech or any kind of speech like this, you know, I told you I pray, right?
Right.
I made Katie absolutely crazy. You all should know that.
Not true. Not true.
But during my prayer time about tonight, and I don't know who this message is for, I wanted to share another story. At one point in my career at Lockheed Martin, I was just miserable going to work every day. And I was miserable because I had this one individual who was determined to do everything he could to make my life hard. To sabotage me, to have meetings. I need to be in the meeting, but I'm not invited to the meeting. And it was just torture. And I'd come home every day complaining to my husband, just complaining. He does this. And during my prayer time, and this went on for several months, you should know. And I was just miserable. And I was saying to God, God, why am I suffering? I'm up at night because I'm just annoyed by this person.
Yeah.
He's probably sleeping well. But why am I annoyed? Why am I being annoyed? Because you said I could have peace. He shouldn't have peace. And I don't have peace right now.
Yeah.
But you promised me peace. And during my prayer time, I told you that I'll go to the words are right there waiting for me when I open my Bible. And so I went to the 23rd Psalm, which is one of my favorite scriptures, right?
It's a good one.
But there's a verse in there that talks about, thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. And it clicked with me at that point. It's like, Shan, you have victory here. You got to get that in your spirit and in your head, because the table is prepared for you. God's not going to remove your enemy, right? If you see this, you're going to have to go through it. But He's there with you. The table's been prepared for you, not in the absence of your enemy, but in the presence of your enemy. So you're going to have to go through. And the first thing you've got to do is stop giving him God's time. I was so busy complaining about this individual that I wasn't praying about him, right? I was just talking about him. So I was no better really than he was, right? But when I tell you, the moment I asked for forgiveness, because that was wrong, and said, I'm not going to allow this person to take up another moment of my time in my conversation, it happened.
Wow.
I got the promotion, got the best job I ever had in my career.
Wow.
But I had to go to the Word to remember. So I don't know who that is for tonight.
Probably
in our audience,
everyone.
But I can tell you, remember, there's a table that's been prepared for you in the presence of your enemies. And trust me, you're going to make it through whatever that's been put in front of you.
Absolutely.
So don't worry about it. Just keep focused. Keep praying about it. Whatever it is, I'm not sure what your situation is, but that is my go-to scripture when I'm in the workplace, and it just seems like there's people who are just not a supporter, what have you, right?
Yeah.
He's not going to remove the enemy until it's time, until you're prepared, until you've learned something. And I think I stayed in that for so long because I had to learn that. I had to learn that. So I just wanted to share that.
Absolutely.
tonight.
Oh, I love that story. Is amazing. Thank you for sharing. that really resonates in so many ways. And I just, watch out. I hope nobody gets a hold of your email address, or else it's going to be the Church of Shan Cooper starting here soon. Well, to close this out, because I can see on my screen here that there are just short of about 100 questions coming in for
wonderful.
Q&A.
Fun.
But one last one, because I think you and I talked about, as we were thinking about sort of closing this out, we were talking about the next generation, how we grow up in our careers, in our lives, in our families, and what does it look like to step out, even further into the world? How do we take on and do some of the things that you've talked about, and why is that responsibility important?
Right. Well, first of all, I am so excited that you all are doing this, because this is where it starts, right? Oftentimes when you're in the workplace, sometimes you can be the only one, right? And you have to be careful. I know you can't run revivals in the workplace and things like that, but it's often nice to have a little prayer partner, right, there with you. But you don't always have that. But I am so grateful that you all are doing this work, because this is where ministry and how ministry starts, right? And I have to tell you, I'll start with by the things that I'm being mindful of these days. One is I'm being very mindful of what I say and do in my home. I've got 2 perfect grandchildren, as you know.
Perfect. They are
and
perfect.
And I am determined that I'm going to speak life, to them, for them, around them, because children and young people pick up the things we say, right? They pick up our mannerisms and things that we do.
Absolutely.
And so I'm so grateful that you all, much younger than I am, that you're
Only
doing this work, because you're going to be the generation that I believe brings us back together as a country, as a people, as a nation. Because you all understand, I think for some reason, I think you all were just made different, that you understand the value of togetherness and bringing difference together. I think my generation and the generation before mine, we've struggled with that, right? We've struggled with that.
So you're saying millennials aren't all bad?
You're not all bad. I promise you're not all bad. I envy you for that, right? Sometimes in my generation, we bring a lot of baggage to situations, right? But I think again, if you all can just stay the course and let God lead you, great things are ahead. The best is yet to come, right? And so
Absolutely.
Don't stop doing what you're doing now. Keep the relationship with Him. I can't imagine my life without God in it, right? Just can't imagine. Can't breathe without Him, can't eat without Him. And so keep this going and spread it, right? Bring others into the fold.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I would encourage you to do. I'm just so proud and so excited of you guys, with the work you guys are doing. This is real ministry.
It is so much fun. We just love it. And we're so thankful to have you here with us. So I'm going to get into some of these questions now. And truly, I don't think I've ever seen so many questions. So we're going to get to as many as we possibly can.
Sure, I'll try to be fast.
You take as much time as you want. So the first one is, and I think you'll like this one, how do you truly, italicized for emphasis, not judge others when judgment is so natural, especially in our community?
Yeah, and I don't, because I'm so flawed. That I've got to, I often question people, how can you be so worried about somebody else? I've got to work on my own soul salvation every day, right? Every day, because I'm so flawed. And so I try to focus on me and the things I need to correct in myself. And so I really don't judge. And people will say, well, Shan, why are you smiling all the time? That can't be real. Why are you happy all the time? Well, it's real. Because I'm not carrying other people's problems. I'm just working on me every day. Just praying for me, Lord, help me to be all you need and want me to be. And so I really don't judge people. And if I find myself going down that path, I'm quick to check myself. Because again, I'm flawed. I'm not perfect.
Do you have people who you allow to hold you to that too? Like, is that a role in family? Is that a role in friendship? Who could say, Shan, this is out of the line that you want to have for yourself?
Yeah, my husband's very good at that. Let me just say, he's very good at that, and which is wonderful, right? We check each other. We really do. And he'll say to me, honey, I don't think that was the right attitude. I don't think that was Christian-like. Would Christ do that? I'm like, probably not. Let me,
Good question.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. But it really, and it's not as hard as you think it would be. If you're intentional about it. So when you start to think a thought about judging someone else, just pause and say, okay, what did I not do that was right today, right? You're going to find something more than likely, right? Either you didn't pray when you're supposed to, or you didn't study your Bible when you weren't supposed to. I mean, we're just all flawed. And when you can see yourself that way, it makes it easy.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a great way to think about it. How do you discern, or how would we discern if we're walking in God's path or not? Just an easy question.
Yeah. But I would say there's a peace about your life, right? In spite of all that's going on around you, there's a peace about your life that you sleep well, you're not stressed. And we're going to go through some things. Don't get me wrong, because that's to build us, right? That's to build that faith muscle. So you're going to suffer some things in life. You're going to go through some unhappy times. But even through that, I like to say you bend, but you don't break, right? When we lost Deanna, I mean, it took me to my knees. Don't get me wrong, right? But it took me to my knees, which is where I needed to go, where I needed to be, so I could get back, settled again. And so you just got to keep working at it. But it's a daily journey. It's a daily journey. It really is.
No question. What are some of your sort of daily strategies for discerning if you feel like you're where you're supposed to be? In addition to peace, you pray, you are in the Word.
I think so. It's amazing. About 90% of the time, I wake up with a song.
Wow.
And some weeks it's the same song repeated over and over.
Wow.
Because the words are teaching me something, right? They're teaching me something. And my day, I can usually judge my day by the words of the song that I'm hearing that morning, right? When I don't have a song when I wake up in the morning, I get a little worried and a little nervous. And I start, and it forces me to pray then and say, okay, God, I don't know what's going to happen today, but give me clarity of thought, help me to be a good leader. There's some things I pray every day, right? And then I just say to God, this is the day that the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and I will be glad. And I command myself, right? That's what the Word tells us, right?
Yeah.
And regardless of what happens that day, Lord, this is the day that you've made. Aunt got a diagnosis today that we didn't want to hear, but it's still the day that you've made, and I'm going to rejoice and be glad in it. Now, that has taken me years to get to where I am now, folks. So I didn't start here.
Yeah.
But I'm there now.
The discipline.
The discipline, right? Back to the discipline, right? And I'm so grateful to my parents today, but didn't like them back then. I love them today.
You still got it.
But it's the discipline of that, right? And you have to just tell yourself that and be really intentional about that. And so you guys are probably saying, God, Shan talks to herself a lot. I do. But me and God are in constant communication. He's got to keep close tabs on me. So we're in constant communication.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Absolutely.
But I sing. I do things.
Here come the singing requests. I'm telling you,
I should have said that. Right. Should have said that. But I would encourage you to find something that brings you peace and just go right to doing that, right?
Absolutely. Be it song, be it journaling.
Because you're going to have those moments of suffering. You're going to have those numbers of stress because we're human, right? And we live in this world.
Yeah.
But there's a peace still that exists when you're in the will and you're walking upright with God, right?
Absolutely.
Because He'll bring you through it.
No question. So this, I think, is a good follow-up question to that. How do you trust so much in what you can't see?
I think I go back to what I said earlier. I've seen God work. Even as I think about my own life now, there was no way that this little country girl from Anniston, Alabama, right, should have risen to the ranks to be running a Fortune 500 company operation, a multi-billion-dollar operation, building military aircraft and weapon systems, right? There's no way, this poor little black girl from this small town should have gotten an education as she got, because first in my family to go to college. So I know that there has to be a God at work in my life. Because I can remember standing in the welfare line with my mom as a little girl, holding her hand as we collected, bologna, that nasty thick peanut butter that would just choke you to death, and a box of cheese. I remember those days. I can remember when my dad lost his job and we didn't have insurance. I can remember, our having to, get food from other members of our church. And I can remember those things. And you don't get from that to this, to God be the glory, right? But I know he was at work in my journey. I know he's been at work. And to never have had to really, truly interview for a job, that's all God. That's all God. Nothing I've done would have gotten me to this. And so it's the experience, it's actually living, and I can just even looking at other people, right? I mean, I heard Kelsey's testimony tonight. Nothing but God gives her the mental stability to be able to live through that and go through that and still smile today, still stand on this stage and talk about his goodness. So those are the things that I can remember. Other people's testimonies, and I've heard just beautiful testimonies throughout my entire life, but my own testimony lets me know that there is a God.
Yeah. Amen. Now I feel like I probably have a lot of other people in my court of wanting to wake up every day and be Shan Cooper because that was inspiration if ever I heard it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Just truly are one of a kind. So how the questions continue to come in.
Okay.
So
Sure.
here we go.
We'll keep going.
How people are sensing just an incredible peace in the way that you talk about grief or talk about suffering. And I couldn't agree with that more. How do you go about finding that peace? Let's say if it's not feeling innate, you have your tools that you turn to, but what does it look like actionably when you're sitting in the deepest moment of grief or the hardest moment of suffering?
Right. It's hard. It's hard. But for me, it'll be maybe different for everybody, but I have to steal away to a quiet place. And there's one room in my house that I go to, the same chair, just kneel in the same place, and it's my place, right? It's my sacred place in my house, and that I just need to steal away. And sometimes, let me tell you, I'm in there bawling. My husband doesn't know what's going on. He just says, "I know you're in there praying and doing something with God because I hear you talking or whatever," right? And so you have to find that, right? Find that place for you. And I'm not telling people to go and just be crazy. They're going to pray 24 hours a day. I don't pray 24 hours a day, right? I pray every day, but I don't pray 24 hours a day. I pray throughout the day. But one day a week on Saturdays, I am in my prayer room. And I'm just there in my quiet time. Sometimes I just sit and meditate. Sometimes I don't say anything. I just sit there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't even ask God for anything. It just becomes my thank you day, right? Thank you for this, Lord. Thank you for that, Lord. Some days he will just have me sit there and I'll have to pray for other people. I don't even pray for myself. It's my day to pray for other people and to speak life over people. And I think that's what we as Christians just got to do more. We got to speak more life, right? The world is ugly. People are angry. There's hatred everywhere, but we have to be the group of people that people can turn to, right? Because we speak life. Isn't it more exciting to be around someone who's excited and happy versus someone who's complaining and down? No, speak life.
Always.
Speak life.
And especially so when you know where a little bit more, to your point from earlier, when you take space to listen and you know, we're all coming from from various versions of our own hard stories. And when you see someone as a person who has suffered, who has grieved, who has struggled, so much easier to stop and listen and, to your point, kind of unite rather than divide. Exactly.
And that was the one thing I would always do in the workplace is, particularly at Lockheed Martin, because I had a lot of people out there who were living paycheck to paycheck, right? And I knew that. But it was always important to me that I take the time to go out. So on my calendar, for 4 hours a week, sometimes more if I could, but I'd want to be out walking the floor, walking the plant on the manufacturing floor, just talking to people, saying, "How are you doing today? Katie, tell me, how's your family," right? Because sometimes you're going to be the only smile that person gets that day, right? And so oftentimes people would come back to me later and say, "Shan, you didn't know this, but I was going through so-and-so and so-and-so, and your hug or your greeting or whatever, right? You made me laugh that day." And so sometimes we can't get caught up in ourselves, right? You got to think about the people around you. And I learned that from my dad. And so I give him and my mom credit for that. Because he's magical at reaching people and touching people. And people just love being with him, and because that's how he approaches life.
Definitely.
And so just learning how to look beyond ourselves and reach out to people and say, it doesn't hurt us to say, "Good morning, how are you?" And with a smile.
Absolutely. Well, and I feel like I can vouch for that as one of the lower people, probably lowest people on your communication totem pole. I feel like every time Shan and I have gotten to work on a couple of projects together, and she's got, every CEO in town who is talking to her and needs her help on something. And still, little old me, any text message to Shan is always answered. She's always got a smile. She's always got time. There's sometimes an emoji in those text messages, which I certainly appreciate.
I'm getting good at that, right?
But there's always joy. You make
Thank
people
you.
feel known and seen, and that I think is just an integral part of your personal and professional reputation, which I think you reflect, what God's love is so well in that way. And I appreciate having gotten to experience some of that, and now everybody else getting to see that in you too is just really cool.
And I'm just really smart too, Katie. I know you're the smartest person on the team, so don't think
Not
I'm crazy.
true.
Those other people are just talking.
Let's
right?
remember that I pass-failed Bio 101, so probably not true. So drawing on just a little bit of what we were talking about before that, how do you believe some of your seasons of suffering have prepared you for where you are today?
I think I had to go through those things. I think because you grow up as a Christian and you hear all the great things about God is this, and he can do anything but fail. Nothing's impossible if you believe, all these things, right? And so I needed to go through some suffering so I could really, and that was what really led me to really be on this journey to get to know God for myself. Didn't want my dad telling me or my pastor telling me. I want to know him for myself. And so I needed to go through some suffering. I needed to go through some challenging times. So I've been demoted. I've not gotten jobs that I wanted, that I felt that I knew I deserved those jobs. I thought I deserved those jobs, right? And so I've had some real disappointments. My plan for my life was I was going to be married by 25 and have, 2.5 kids, whatever they were requiring us to have at that time. And, life was going to be perfect. My husband was going to be just this great, super rich man, all this kind of stuff that we dream about, right?
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't have kids, okay, physically. I didn't get married, and I was an old bride until I was like my late 30s, almost 40. So everything I had worked out.
That's different than what you planned out.
Nothing, right?
Yeah.
But it was the path that God wanted me to be on. So it worked out beautifully, right? I've got the most perfect husband in the world, got a bonus daughter, and now 2 beautiful grandchildren. So it works out. But suffering for me, there were some things that I needed to go through, and to not see God as a sugar daddy, right? That you can ask him for something, he gives you everything, right?
Absolutely.
No, there are some things you're going to go through, and it says in the Bible that we're going to suffer, right?
Yeah.
But I needed to go through some hardships and some difficult times to really affirm my relationship with God.
Yeah, I think that is so great, and I appreciate that. We've gotten kind of one question that I think is relevant to what you just said.
Sure.
But how, navigating your journey to marriage and your journey to family life, how do you know if a relationship is the right one? Or how do you, walk through the days of seeking that right relationship and having to wait what probably felt like forever for it?
Yeah. So by the time I was 38 when I got married. So I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to get married at this point. I'm going to die alone. That didn't happen, thank goodness. So for me, I had met this wonderful friend, my husband Eddie and I. We were friends for a long time before we thought about dating, probably for about 10 years, right? And but then we started dating, whatever. And I just said to God, if this is the man for me, Lord, I don't want to waste any time, right? Because I'm getting old. Give me the sign that I need. First and foremost, I really want him to know you, right? To know God, because we had to be equally yoked, right? Yeah. And we were we did the premarital counseling, which I advise everybody to do. We're going through, had gone through all that, but I still wanted to be sure. And
this is after you had said yes at this point.
We were engaged, right? I said yes, right?
But still looking for certainty.
Well, Lord, I just got to be sure, right? It's got to be sure, because not many marriages had worked out in my family, my extended family, right? And so I said, Lord, give me a sign. I need a sign to know that this man is for me. And I was at Eddie's house one morning, because I wasn't living here. I moved to Maryland, but I was at his house one morning, and I went into the room, and he was down on his knees praying.
Wow.
And that was the sign that I needed, right? Yeah. I just wanted to know. We talked about God, we going through this counseling, but I need to know for certain, God, that this is who you have for me. And for me to see him on his knees praying, I will tell you, my husband is on his knees in the morning, every morning, doesn't miss a morning, and every night. before he gets into bed. And I'm so blessed. I know I'm blessed to have that. He's a great, amazing Sunday school teacher. And so God gave me what I wanted, right? I wanted someone who knew him first, who could lead our family, based upon what God has directed him to do, but who would love me as Christ loved the church. And I think he just adores me. I'm just saying it on tape now. I hope that's true. But anyway.
I'm sure it does. We'll have to show this to him later.
I'm going to show it to him later, right?
Have him write in, comment, let us know that's true.
Right. And so for me, it took a while, but I didn't. Now I'll tell you, I had some really bad relationships though, and I'm so glad they didn't work out. Oh my God. And they were bad because what I would tend to do, I've gotten better at this now as I've gotten old, but I would tend to try to help God, So I'm like, okay, God, I think that man right there for me, I'm going to help you, right? And so you break yourself, you break your neck trying to make it work. It's not working. Ladies, let it go, right? Because it's just not meant for you, right? And you're arguing all the time. There just wasn't any happiness around it, But when I met Eddie, and we were friends for a long time, and we decided, you know what? There might be something here for us. And so I can really say I married one of my best friends. And we're still dating.
That is amazing.
Still dating.
Oh, I love that so much. So it was worth the wait.
It was worth the wait.
Incredible. That is so good. All right, a couple more here, but switching gears just a little bit. So what advice would you have for brand new believers who didn't grow up in the church?
Yeah. And there's a lot of that happens, right? I would tell you first and foremost to be selective. You need to find you a Bible-believing congregation. And I'm saying congregation and not church because, sometimes people don't like the edifice or the nomenclature around church, right? Yeah. But find you a Bible-believing congregation where you can walk your way into the full knowledge of God. And it's a process. Most people think, gosh, I believe today I'm free from all of my sins. I'll have no more challenge, whatever. No. This is a process. This is an everyday journey, right? But the first thing you got to do is surround yourself with people who have the same goal, objective, and value system that you have as it relates to your faith. Because you need that added infrastructure, because otherwise it gets challenging to be able to walk the walk alone, right?
Absolutely.
And just know that you're not going to be perfect, and sometimes you're going to fall short, but get up, dust yourself off, and keep going, right? So that would be the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is do find yourself a rhythm or a time frame or way that you spend quality time with the Lord, right? And again, I'm not saying praying for 12 hours. I grew up in Pentecostal faith, so fasting is what we did every year, right? And so I know I fast with no problems. And prayer was just something you did all the time, right? So it's easier for me to say that, right? And that's why I say, but for their members of my family, though, and some of my friends who say, Shan, I can't pray for an hour like you do. Well, praying for an hour is nothing for me. My husband will tell me, I can't pray for an hour like you do, right? But I can do it probably for 2 hours, right?
And this is coming from a man who's praying on his knees.
He's praying on his knees twice a day, but he's saying, look, I'm going to get that done probably in 15 minutes, right? And that's okay, right? That's okay.
Different ways.
But you do need to find some quality time.
Yeah.
And if you're a new believer that you haven't gone up in church, you're going to have lots of questions, right? And that's why I say that Bible-believing group, that congregation, so people can help you on the journey.
Definitely.
And you have to be really careful. And that's where the prayer becomes important, because you want to be led by God, right? That you're in the right place to do that. And so I would say just start there. Don't try to, be an evangelist or, a pastor or whatever, coming in. If something that's new and foreign to you, but take your time, find the right people to surround yourself with.
Absolutely. I love that. So in kind of the opposite direction, you've talked a fair amount about not judging and about uniting rather than dividing, all of which are so wonderful. And what would you offer maybe just as kind of practical advice for talking to people about God who are very anti-Christianity?
Yeah. And so I'm going to tell you right now, don't do that if you're not prepared for the conversation, right? Because you'll end up angry at the end of the conversation. And so you failed at that point, right? And so I don't... this is one of my prayers. God, you work through me today and then you decide what I need to do and when I need to say something to someone, right? And so the times that I've talked to people or said something about my faith or something going on with people, it's been an easy conversation, right? Because I haven't tried to force myself or force my belief on someone. So there are some people that you're not going to be able to witness to, right? One, he's not called you to do, that's for somebody else to do. Sometimes your witness is just how you carry yourself. I've had one of my bosses actually say to me, Shan, I want what you have. You're happy all the time. Why is that? Well, that was the door right there for me to walk in and say why that is, right?
Absolutely.
And we had a conversation about that, right?
Wow.
And so when you're ready to witness, it's amazing how God, it just happens naturally, like in that example, right?
Sure.
There are going to be some people, they're just going to watch you and say, Katie calls herself a Christian, I'm going to see. And they're also going to test you.
Yeah.
Right? Let's see how quickly I can get her to lose her God. And it just happens, right?
Definitely.
It's just human nature, right?
That's so true.
And so what I try to do first, Katie, is carry myself in a way that I'm approachable, that people will want to be around me, people will want to talk to me, what have you, and then somehow the door just opens for the conversation to naturally happen.
Yeah.
And so just know that sometimes sometimes there'll be people that you and I will know, because we know a lot of people in common. It will not be my job to witness to that person. It'll be your job.
That's
right?
daunting. Maybe not yet.
Yeah, it probably will be, right? And so, and that's why you really do have to be, kind of within yourself know, okay, this is an okay topic for me to have. But typically for me, the door is just open where people have just asked me questions.
For sure.
Right.
So an open door rather than confrontation. Taking
Exactly.
something head on. Let it
Exactly.
happen. I like that. That's awesome. So still on that theme, as a generation that you believe can bring us back together, what advice would you offer to jumpstart that? How do you think we should meaningfully take action? Recognizing that everyone has different thoughts about everything. What can we do?
Right. So I think having sessions like this, I think, again, having sessions, and not sessions, again, about, your faith or whatever in the workplace, that's probably not appropriate for some of your workplaces, but just bringing people together. I mean, one of the things that I would do, and that I've always done, is I'd like to go sit down and have coffee with people who look different from me, who sound different from me, who may be from a different part of the world than I am, just to get to know them, right?
Yeah.
And so it's simple things like that are simple things that we can all do that will start to bring us back together. It's so easy to get hung up on the things that make us different, right? But when you can sit down in a room and talk about people, and I think you'll find that we have a lot more in common than we think we do. I got to tell you, this pandemic last year was a great year of reflection for me. And it caused me to sit back and question. I'm still praying about what's going to be next, but how am I spending my time? And is this how I want to spend my time, right?
Right.
Well, one of the things I know as I reflected on all that was happening in the world and around politics and just a bunch of just nutty stuff going on, is that there's a role for me to play, right? Because change typically happens one person at a time.
Sure.
So if all of us decided, okay, we're going to do one thing next week or this week that's going to work on unity, find out what's comfortable for you and then go do it, right?
So pick one thing.
Pick one thing.
Start there.
One thing that, and for me, I like hanging out with people who are different from me, just so I can understand.
Absolutely. I love
And you'll
that.
get asked crazy things and things like that, but that's okay. Just take it and keep going. Right?
Definitely.
Keep going.
I think that's awesome. So in the midst of getting to know everyone and making everyone feel cared for, you've got a pretty busy life. How do you find balance? How do you approach balance? How do you find space for quiet time? Just what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so it's easier now, I'll tell you, since I left corporate America. And I left because I had lived a life of purpose, but I wanted to live my life on purpose. And so I'm real mindful now at this stage of my life, how I spend my time. Before, when you're working, when you're working in corporate America for sure, it's a little bit different, right? But I've always been really intentional and very good at compartmentalizing my life, right? And so, and probably working at Lockheed Martin made it a little bit easier because so much of my work was, a lot of my work was in the classified space, so I couldn't talk about it anyway.
Okay.
Or I'd have to kill you, right? And
Yeah,
so,
great.
And so I learned how to be at work, be in the moment there. When I'm at home, I'm in the moment with my family and with my husband. And we always lived our life, faith, family, and then career. That was never more tested than when I decided to leave Lockheed Martin, because people thought, oh my God, you're on this great trajectory. How could you walk away?
Yeah.
Well, family took priority. And I find too that when I say things, I want to be tested on those things, right? And so I'd said that all my career, and then the time came, right? My husband said, we don't really need to relocate again. I said, you're right. So I'm not going to take the promotion, right? And so I am very intentional about how I spend my time. And what I would do is I would just say to people, my team, look, I need you all to be refreshed. So when you're on vacation, you need to be on vacation. I never got to take full vacations, right? Because I could never be disconnected from the office.
Yeah.
But what I would say to my family, look, I'm going to take an hour every day while we're on vacation to just do company stuff. My team, look, I'm not checking my emails every minute of the day. If you need me, you got to call my personal cell phone. That way I know you really need me, I'm going to answer. I'm not answering the work phone.
Yeah.
And so you put things in place that allow you to compartmentalize your life and to keep things in priority, but you have to be intentional about it. And I think that's what sometimes we get caught up in today's thing that we're needed 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Trust me, none of us are needed 24 hours a day. Take the
And
time.
if that can be true for you, that can be true for all of
Exactly.
us.
Take the time to exercise. Take the time to go have coffee. Take the time to go to lunch, what have you. The world is not going to fall apart if you take care of you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it was a hard lesson for me to learn that. But you got to take care of you first, and then you can take care of everybody else.
Absolutely. I love that. So this is we've got 2 more questions, but the last one is really short. This one makes me laugh a little bit because I'm so interested in how you're going to answer it. But how do you genuinely remain so humble when you've accomplished so much and won so many awards?
Oh God, to God be the glory is all I can say. I'm amazed at what he does, right? I really, really am. And I recognize that I'm blessed. And I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful.
Absolutely.
I have, cousins in my family. I have a cousin who was pregnant at 14 years old. I can't imagine being pregnant at 14 years old, right? I have cousins who are in prison. I mean, all the things that, people will hear, so people look at me and think, oh gosh, Shan's life is perfect. No, it's not, right? All of that. But for some reason, he chose me to take a different path.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful. And so for every award that I get, I always say first, to God be the glory. For every promotion, to God be the glory. And there are things I'm going to tell you. I just knew, gosh, I'm not even smart enough to even be in this job, God. So you got to help me. You got to teach it to me, right? But to God be the glory for all of that.
So the humility comes from giving it right back to where it came from.
Give it right back to where it came from. Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Well, this is one of our favorite closeout questions, but what are maybe some book recommendations or favorite books of yours? And I would love to pile onto that too, book of the Bible that you might say is one of your favorites. I'm sure there are lots. So books just to read and book of the Bible.
Okay. There are a lot of books of the Bible that I like, but I really like the book of Ruth.
Yeah.
Think about that powerful woman back in that time, right? Who did what it took to take care of family. So first she was about family, right? She could have gone back to her people. No, she chose to go with her mother-in-law, with Naomi, right?
Yep.
And she did what she had to do. And so to get Boaz or whatever. I mean, she just did all the right things, right? But that powerful woman figure, right, to me. And I love when she talks about, your people shall be my people and your God shall be my God. I'm very much a family person.
Definitely.
So the book of Ruth is one of my favorite books of the Bible. And then books I'm reading. I'm actually reading a book now called The Color of Compromise. And it is a book that speaks to slavery and actually the role that the church played in slavery.
Yeah.
My friend Dan Cathy is a beautiful friend of mine, and so this is a book that
Dan Cathy is the CEO of Chick-fil-A.
Dan Cathy is the CEO of Chick-fil-A.
Shane's great friend.
My great, eat more chicken. He'd appreciate me saying that. So Dan, he's also my prayer partner around things, and so he recommended this book, and so I'm reading it, and it's a really interesting historical perspective.
Yeah.
Because as you might imagine, I get curious about my heritage and things like that, and I get curious about, particularly, questioning God, like, why is the African American race here and not here, right? And
How did this happen?
Exactly, right. So you want to read and get smart about those things. So that's the book I'm reading right now. But I have been reading. I'm reading President Obama's book. I'm also reading a new book called The CEO Test. I still read a lot of business books. That's the one I'm reading right now. And you'll find I also read 2-3 books at the same time. So I'm reading all those three of those books right now at the same time.
I love it.
But I do enjoy reading. I read a lot. Not as much as probably I used to, but I do read a lot. And when I can't grab a book, I'm usually I read the Harvard Business Review and I read Fortune magazine. Those are the only 2 magazines that I read.
I love it. Well, we've got full reading list now to get us started. That is awesome. Well, Shan, thank you so much. This was just truly incredible. And it is such an honor to have you. And it has been so great to get to talk to you. We are entering our long summer break. So everyone, we will be back for Pour again on September 7th. And kind of 2 teasers leading up to that one. Be on the lookout on our social media throughout the course of the summer, because we're going to have some volunteering and service opportunities. So you heard Shan talk about the importance of this generation doing something. If that's a nudge, be on the lookout for those. And then another plug for the September 7th gathering. That will be one where you will want to watch it in a small group. So go ahead and think about who you might want to watch it with. If you need help getting connected to a small group, let us know. But go ahead and mark your calendar and plan for that to be one where you can watch with other people. So thank you, Shan. We're so glad to have you. Thank you, Kelsey Ann. That's all we got.
Wonderful. Be blessed.